Welcome back to Q&A with Doc. Without Doc this week, we have a special guest, Comics by Perch, joining us to answer all the questions for the Patreon backers. How you doing, Perch?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. It's awesome to talk to you. I always love talking with you.
I'm excited for this next question from Braden.
Okay.
The Fall of the House of X series is wrapped up, and from the opening page, it was a mess. Forgive my rant here. The issue mistakenly carries the same title. The turn is issue 4. We get numerous off-panel fights, such as Nimrod just punched Colossus into space, which would have been really cool to see. Bizarre passive lightning bolts from different locations by Storm. I can't leave out Psylocke wanting to kill, then Rogue wanting to curb stomp Omega Sentinel. We end on science that doesn't make sense. The Rents force is mentioned, but it's incorrect. Jerry clearly doesn't know science. I say all this to ask, is this just one of the most rushed finales in X-Men history, or is this truly what they think the storytelling is now? This book was the drizzling shits.
Yeah, it was.
Good summation.
Yeah, no, it was so bad, and I haven't talked to Duggan about it. I'm friends with a lot of Duggan's friends, and even the close friends can't defend this. And by the way, to put something else off my back, people like to compliment Kieran Gillen, and I understand he's written some good stuff in the past, but read those comics. They're not better. Duggan's are worse.
It ends worse. Rise of the Powers of 5. Rise of Powers 10 number 5 is worse than Fall of the House of X number 5.
Sure. No, absolutely. Quit imagining that this guy is somehow light years better of what he's putting out, because it's still absolute shit. These books, I do think that somewhere in Marvel's mind, they believe this is a good finale and this is good writing. I think that I know that there's been some editorial praise for how Duggan wrapped up his Iron Man run, is wrapping it up, which is also you have terrible comics. And they don't. The thing is nobody is really talking about how great these books are. Even the fans, the people who are hardly defend the Krakoa era, they defend the concept of Krakoa. They don't defend these issues because, one, I don't think they're reading them, but they're just blatantly awful. The writing is terrible. I think this is what Marvel wants, though, because if you look at the solicitations and to see what they're coming out with, whether it's the Endless Spider-Verse stuff, whether it's what they're doing with the From the Ashes, it's more of the same. The writers have changed, but by and large, you look at the plots, you look at the summaries, you look at where they're going. The concept, at least, is in the same vein. So I don't think we're out of it yet. I think we're still very much in the thick of this.
Yeah, Fall of the House of X was really weird because the X-Men were so bloodthirsty. They were murdering so many people, almost without provocation in a lot of cases. But I will give Duggan this. In the 5th issue, they decide not to kill somebody. They're like, listen, we're heroes. We don't kill. I was like, well, I'm glad you finally drew the line to say it.
Yeah, it was such a tone deaf issue, and it worries you a little bit reading this because the characters seem to, like you say, take a lot of delight in just murdering the shit out of people. Colossus is inventing new ways to kill people. Like, hey, what if you use telekinesis or something to throw me as a big metal object and just pulp people? And I mean, he seems really excited by the idea. Like, I could fucking kill the hell out of people. And you see these lines, and whether it's they're too hung up in politics or they've just whatever it happens to be, but there was a line from wasn't the X-Men, from a different book, I think it was in Blood Hunt, where Captain America is like, I've met a lot of nice vampires, but I've never met a nice Nazi. And you're like, what are you talking about? Vampires were overrunning the city eating people. Like, now's not the time to talk about the friend vampires that you've had. Like, I get suddenly we've got Nazi vampires for some reason. And like, again, who gives a shit? But why are you doing this? This stuff makes no sense.
There's a lot about that did make sense. The thing that made me the most mad, truthfully, on Fall of the House of X number 5, is we do get Nimrod apparently punting Colossus into space.
Right.
Psylocke telepathically connects to, I think it's Cyclops, who's next to Nightcrawler, and they're like, hey, Colossus is flying through space because Nimrod kicked him or whatever. And then he looks over at Nightcrawler and is like, you go get him. And then Nightcrawler's like, yeah, just project where you see Cyclops in my head and I'll go get him. I was like, this dude almost died trying to teleport like with an extra person. He can't see where he's going. He actually can't teleport there. How the hell is he going to catch a metal man flying through space at like 11,000 miles an hour? Guess what happens if he does catch him? He's going to cold fuse to him.
Well, this is the part. I mean, you know, always in comics, there's the logic of science. It gets kind of tossed aside at different times, and that's just how comics are. But generally, you just suspend your disbelief. You don't, you know, take your disbelief, dig a giant hole, bury it, you know, shit on it. I mean, they're asking you to stretch your imagination a little bit, and in the series, all kinds of things. I mean, didn't we see Nightcrawler teleport into space at the very beginning of Hoxpox when they're trying to defeat Orcus, and the fact that it killed a bunch of people trying to get the sun? Do you remember this in the station?
Yeah, Mother Mold.
Now they're
just
pop into space to catch Colossus. I mean, sure.
If they had established that he had that type of range, I'm almost willing to go with it. But they've established that he doesn't have that type of range. That's when they did that sword book, and you had Manifold and all the people that could teleport out. They couldn't take Nightcrawler because his power wasn't strong enough.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, if you're going to establish the rules, you got to play within the boundaries. You know what I mean?
Comics is no place for people with long memories, I guess.
Well, I don't know. That frustrates me. Just as a Nightcrawler fan, I was like, what are they doing to this guy? And as you mentioned, Rise of the Powers of 10 is worse. I did a review a couple of days ago on the YouTube channel that's up on Patreon now with Jim from Weird Science. I still don't know how Phoenix beat Enigma.
No. Well, she had help with all her friends.
Yeah, but he was part of the Dominion.
Yeah. But, you know, the power of friendship. It was, you know.
She had hot paws?
Yeah, the thing about that comic is it's remarkable how that issue's plot resembles the Care Bears. And the fact that when the Care Bears all combine their powers together, then it's the power of caring, and they can defeat things. That's my full extent of knowledge of Care Bears right there, by the way. I've that's all I got.
You never saw Care Bears, the movie?
I did not. No, I know. I just remember a lot of parodies about the power of love, and apparently that's how Phoenix defeated the Dominion, through the power of love or friendship, teamwork. I don't know. This series has been, you know, Hickman has gotten criticized for having a very dense, complicated storyline, but you could follow Hoxpox and you understood what was going on. You know, in this wrap up here, we've got whatever the hell Gillen is smoking and doing, and I'm convinced no editor was reading any of this. You know, Jordan White was checked out, leaving this thing, knowing he didn't have a job. Brevoort's coming in, just trying to find somebody who will write this shit. And so I think Gillen was just all over the place, and Duggan was like, let's see how many of the X-Men we can get to kill people creatively. This is what we got.
Now, obviously, they've made a big deal that Brevoort's coming in. You know, apparently Dan Buckley had to go to him personally because we need to save or salvage the X-Men line. But it does sound like it was a hell of a time behind the scenes. You know, I heard so many rumors that he was going out to people offering this job, and nobody wanted it.
Yeah, I yeah, I can confirm. Yes, there was a lot of people approached, and a lot of people passed.
Is it because of the page rate isn't right, or maybe they had another project, or does it feel like, is X-Men like a toxic brand right now because of the hole that these guys wrote themselves into out after Hickman left? They went off script.
You know, I think it's less necessarily that the X-Men is the toxic brand. I think it's Marvel to some extent is a toxic brand for people. There's just some of the people they approached have been burned so badly by Marvel in the past. They just don't want to put up with this shit anymore. And I think there was a definite, like, it's not worth it to me. You know, it's not worth it to me financially. It's not worth it to me for the headache. And I mean, the other thing is Brevoort doesn't exactly have the best reputation from a lot of creatives. There's certainly people who like him, but there's a lot more people who just find him, you know, incredibly annoying. And he's not a loved individual. And so the idea of like, let's go here, let's get paid, you know, not enough. Let's have the headache of all this editorial interference and whatever's going on. Yeah, there's also we're picking up the pieces from, you know, what seems like a crazy toxic brand. People didn't want in on that. I can't blame them.
I would have loved to have seen Remender obviously try to come in and fix this up, but his first go around in Marvel, and he did great stuff at Marvel. He made Marvel Comics money. He created awesome storylines and stuff. He was absolutely blindsided by politics behind the scene and screwed over.
For sure. And he won't be back. Right. So, I mean, and you're right. I think he would have been somebody, one, I think Marvel would have loved to have back doing the X-Men. They were never going to get him, so I think it would have been very smart for them to try and get him on board. I mean, that would have been a way to salvage it. Now they've got these other writers. I mean, the biggest problem I think they have is you've got McKay now. And I remember I was on one of your shows and it hadn't been announced, but I'd heard. So I was kind of hinting around at this. And I think we talked about it after the air. How insane is it that you've got McKay on, certainly Moon Knight,
X-Men and
Avengers and X-Men and an event. And there's, in the works, supposedly some event, next year. Like how is that quality going to hold up? It feels like.
Is there even quality there? Have you been reading Avengers? It's not a great, compelling book. Doctor Strange, after that General Strange arc, hasn't been very exciting. Moon Knight has went to crap. As his plate has gotten fuller and more full. And he does have a propensity when he's working on multiple projects, he has to start moving the characters around because I think he doesn't want to do multiple storylines.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's a major problem. I think, right now Marvel doesn't exactly have a huge stable of hit writers. I mean, McKay is probably one of the bigger names they have. They've got Donny Cates wherever he's at. You've got, Al Ewing, who's, kind of exiting stage right. Jason Aaron's moved to DC. Who's their top talent?
Hickman. He's their number one guy.
Hickman. Yeah. So you're going to have Hickman do things from time to time. And then you've got your number two is who? I would argue it's probably McKay. And you're putting out 80 books a month. To see
Chips comes over for a miniseries every once in a while, but he's more doing DC, obviously, with Batman right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a messy time, and they haven't exactly built up the next stable of, compelling writers that people want to read.
Yeah. Next up, Braden says, Professor X says in Fall of the House of X, let mutants live, and to hell with humanity. I am the ultimate sentinel. Even help scientists get murdered by reading their thoughts. He's now being hunted by Shadowcat. Then it becomes Wolverine. Then back to Shadowcat, and the Wolverine plot point seems to be forgotten. Professor X has done bad things in the past, but what is the constant demonization of him lately? Has it gone too far with him, murdering people and damning humanity?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to tell, and from that conclusion, what do they want to do with Professor X? Is it you want to have him be a person who is a villain who is willing to take shortcuts in order to achieve his aims? So is he Magneto now? I do think there's a little bit of the kind of elderly, and I hate that it's this, but kind of the elderly white guy is got to be the villain. You can't have him be the sympathetic character. And sad to say, I do think there's truth to that, there's a little bit of a, you gotta have somebody who's very vanilla ultimately be the ultimate bad guy. I don't know. I don't know how it comes back from it. I don't know if you even want to try. But this entire series and how it wraps up, I can see in 5 years, Professor X will come rolling back into the scene or walking or wherever they decide he's at now. And the X-Men are going to go, well, no problem. Hey, it's good to see you again, pal. Because they don't care about any of these consequences. You had Captain America buying a wedding gift for Mystique. She has tried to murder him on multiple occasions, as well as other civilians. So, I mean, tell that wedding issue, they're in the Avengers mansion. Like, why?
Wasn't Rogue there too?
Yeah.
They hate each other.
Captain Marvel is cheerful and excited about this. I mean, again, you like none of this makes any sense at all. So in terms of the demonization of Professor X, I guess the answer is don't worry about it. Within a couple of years, we'll be back to normal, or who knows, he'll have a mission and it'll be fine.
It was so weird because at the Hellfire Gala, he turns his back on the mutants and allows Nimrod to come in and kill the new X-Men team. And then then he's got like a Black Ops team, in the no place where he's doing everything behind the scenes to go back in time and kill Moira before her X-Men gene activates at 13, decides not to kill her, implants something in her brain, goes back to the real world, turns his back on the mutants again, kills an entire ship full of people, sells out the X-Men, so in the future he could be sitting next to Moira again and have her turn a trigger on and make Enigma, even though he's a Dominion now, able to be fought by Phoenix. But like, is that supposed to make him good?
Yeah. What does any of this mean? I mean, for the character and also, the X-Men running around going, Professor X betrayed us. He's killed some humans. It's like, hey, I got news for you. You're throwing Colossus into crowds of humans and laughing about it. So
that is the weird thing. Remember when House of X Powers of 10 started? And we had all these theories like, wow, the real X-Men must be like imprisoned underneath the island of Krakoa, and these are like evil resurrected like clones of them, because this isn't really Professor X's dream. This is Magneto's dream, and they've clearly gone off the deep end into evil. And I don't know if that was Jonathan Hickman's original plan. I don't think any of this is his original plan. But they never I don't think they ever realized what they were doing was bad once you moved out the brains behind the whole thing, like out to the to doing other Marvel projects.
No, I don't think so. And there was too many. I mean, I would get forwarded little messages and thread from the X Slack when that was going on, and you'd see a lot of the stories were being written like jokes, like hey, wouldn't it be funny, LOL, if if there was a guy and a villain and he captured the heroes and he's monologuing, and then instead of being threatened, the heroes are like, man, you smell like farts, and then the villain would get angry and then he'd fart and then everybody would laugh. Like that's how the writing was happening. And that what I just used for you there is a real example. Like the writers would talk about, and so they put that into the story, and it none of it had any desire to tell something bigger than that, which is wild because Hickman is classically an architect level writer. So he's in there trying to come up with, a lot of world building and things he's doing. And then they bring in a cast of characters who are really just trying to make each other laugh on social media. And that's the combo you do. It's really weird. But if you think about Krakoa and what could have been, you and I, we talked about that a lot. That would have been an amazing storyline. Is you go a couple of years, you get kind of this new status quo down. The X-Men aren't quite acting like themselves, but as a reader, you're like, well, okay, maybe this is what we're doing. All right. And then you just have a moment where, and the funny part would have been is, meanwhile, let's catch up with Sabretooth, and he's been thrown down into the pit, and Sabretooth comes to the realization down there that all of the original X-Men and mutants are there, and they're just slowly being captured. And then that's how you set the next 3 or 4 years of storylines where the X-Men's lives and reputation have been ruined around the world, and the real ones have to come back, and they're going to be hated, but they've also got to overcome this insurmountable, threat of themselves. And I mean, that one, you could just print hundreds of comics based off that concept and salvage the characters. And, even when it's all done, the X-Men are back to being outlaws because their reps has been killed. I mean, there's so much you could have done.
Yeah, that was it was crazy. Next up, Braden says, with the added interest in X-Men by some fans with the buzz around X-Men 97, the relaunch in comics and Marvel's eventual X-Men in the MCU, can it be argued the X-Men are the most important franchise to get right given the state of Disney? I don't know why Marvel wouldn't throw their best at these titles. Sadly, perhaps this is.
Yeah, they definitely threw the best they could get. What's funny is we're talking about this. I'm just kind of looking at your face. We're going through this. We're talking about what could have been. And it's like, it's a mix between kind of amusement and boredom at this point. Because it's been dug so much into the ground. But your writer is correct. This is what's going to make them billions of dollars if they get right. And they may still do it. But it's just, I think there's an opportunity for the comics to be really relevant in charting this future, to be the Infinity Gauntlet, basically, for the X-Men universe. Starlin created that a long time ago. That, by and large, was the movie. And they could have had a similar thing, but
now they'll have to go to House of M, or they can't do Dark Phoenix Saga.
I think they're gonna just do something original. Like they're gonna have to just kind of come up with something new, if they manage to do it at all.
it's so weird that something like House of X Powers of 10, which was certainly high concept, really interesting storytelling, changing the status quo, and a lot of people liked it, ended up spawning out something like X-Men Green. Like, how is this the end result?
It's so amazing we got here. Just so amazing. I don't know. A lot of people predicted it, and I hate them for it because,
Doc did predict it.
Like Marvel will screw it all up, and you don't. I just hate that it has to go there. Like, why did we get this? It was not necessary.
Are you watching the X-Men 97 show? I watch a lot of cartoons because I've got, about to be a 3, 5, and 9-year-old. So I'm watching cartoons 24/7 when I'm with my boys. So I don't watch cartoons by myself. I put on X-Men 97, and the 5-year-old liked it for maybe about 5 minutes, and he asked me to turn it off. He wanted to watch something else. So I haven't got to watch it, but everyone seems to enjoy it.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good series. It's not super smart. It doesn't need to be. It's just kind of telling its story. But it's good. I predicted it would suck. I absolutely did. It just, Disney's track record with animation and some of the other stuff they've done lately, it did not seem like that was a safe bet to bet it would work. But it's been good. It's led to a lot more. I mean, if you look online, the fan theories and where it's going to go and what's going to happen in season 2 and being excited for what comes next, there's a lot more excitement for that than there is the X-Men comics right now.
I thought it was weird that everyone was like, oh my goodness, there aren't as many views on X-Men 97 as Echo. And I was like, why would anybody expect a cartoon to get as many views as a live action program?
Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah, that's not a surprise at all. And Echo was also licensed out to planes and things to use for entertainment. So, I mean, we're also taking a show that had been out. I think that math is not exactly as clean as people are making it out to be. But overall, it's a cartoon. And so people are going to watch. And plus, Marvel has now, for the last how many years, instructed its audience that live action is its brand. So, yeah. Not a big surprise, and I don't think
the Simpsons have been around for over 35 years or something, right?
Yeah, forever. Yeah.
On television. If a live action program had those ratings, it wouldn't have lasted a season.
That's right.
Because there's different expectations. There's less interest in cartoons. So I don't know what the baseline for a successful Disney Plus cartoon is, but it seems like with the buzz and the way people talk, you would have to call X-Men 97 successful.
Yeah. Oh, well, they're definitely, Disney's calling it successful for sure. I mean, they're doing more. They've signed up for more. They're absolutely view that as a success, and it is. It has been. But what's funny is, I think if you look at the movies and what ultimately is going to come out with the MCU, the odds that they actually take their cues from the X-Men 97 cartoon, I think, are pretty high.
So you think they're going to go back to not like Claremont stories, but not his team, like the cartoon team?
Yeah, I think my guess is that absolutely the movies are going to use the X-Men 97 as the basis. It's kind of the best of all worlds. You get some of the Claremont big arcs. You get a lot of the characters everybody knows. That's where I think they're going to go with it. Certainly with changes, but I think they're not going to, versus adopting the Krakoa era. Now, granted, people do stupid shit all the time. So who knows? But that's my bet, is that's what they ultimately get inspired by and use.
Next up, Braden asked, what do you think of the announced weapon extraction backup stories appearing in titles like Spider-Gwen in Fantastic Four and Captain America? Has me less than interested, since I know they will eventually be collected later in a trade.
Sorry, what do we think about that they're doing this, or the stories themselves?
Does it make you more interested in trying out a comic book you normally wouldn't buy to read the weapon extraction story?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I don't. It's been so as a back from being a retailer, that stuff never worked. We'll put something in the backup, and that's ultimately going to lead to people buying the story. I mean, if it's in the backup of a comic to lead to a future arc, of the comic you're currently reading, I think you can get interest there. But they've tried this a number of times, and I've never seen any evidence that it pays off.
As a comic book reviewer and somebody that reads a lot of modern comic books. My assumption is if it's a backup story, it wasn't good enough to publish.
Well, sure. I think that's right. I mean, and plus you've got DC doing these backup stories a lot right now in in their comics, and nobody is viewing those as amazing storytelling that is going to lead to a new series. It's viewed as filler.
Yeah. You didn't fall in love with Gotham Girl Interrupted?
Come on. I mean, Jesus Christ.
What was the point?
I don't know what the point of
it's not like you put like fucking Barry Windsor Smith Weapon X in Marvel Comics Presents or something where you're going to get that story over 12 months in shorter version format. But that's what that series is made for.
Right. That's the entire point of that comic. And you've got top talent, and even and for what it's worth, and I have fond memories of it, but it's not like the 80s did everything perfect. Marvel Comics Presents didn't sell. I mean, we remember that Barry Windsor Smith Weapon X story. What other stories do you remember from Marvel? Does anybody remember other stories from Marvel Comics Presents? There's a few in there, but
the best Wolverine story of all times was in there. That's a big deal.
No, it sure, but that had a lot to do with the talent involved, and it can work, but it still wasn't enough to make that title sell well and do very well. It just by today's standards, sure, it sold great, but I mean that it's just not a thing that works.
Did you see they're doing the Marvel annual event now? I think it's Infinity Watch now. This is like the 8th time they've done an Infinity Gauntlet story in annuals, I think.
Yeah. I don't understand what we're supposed to get out of this at this point. I mean, does anybody know these characters or remember these characters or care about these characters or why these characters? Well, like any of it, I don't know why any of this is happening. It's not selling.
Does anybody remember that the Infinity Stones are sentient and are picking their own wielders now?
Yeah, no. I mean,
that was like 4 years ago, and they never mentioned it since.
No, and in theory, these are the most powerful tools in the galaxy. Like, shouldn't that have come up by now? Like wouldn't that have been helpful during King of Black or some of these events as well? Like right now during Blood Hunt, can the Time Stone show up and maybe fix some of this stuff? I mean, like, seems like feels like this should come up by now.
Yeah. So there you go. I don't like any of these ideas. Next up, the Midnight Phantom says Wolverine's bisexual son Daken is now Hellverine. I'd love to hear your take on the character Daken and how he's been used since his introduction.
I don't think they know what to do with Daken. I think they had that series during what was it? That was the Dark Reign, where he was briefly trying to be the hero, and then they kind of had some stuff spin out of that. But since then, it feels like the character that becomes the backup to the other things they want to do with Wolverine characters. So it's like, number one, we got to do something with Laura Kinney, and then number two, we got Wolverine that we have to deal with, the actual Logan Wolverine, and then Daken's running around somewhere, and then maybe we also have some multiverse Wolverines where they're zombies or fat, can do something with them too. I mean, it's just at this point, it feels like the character had an identity, has lost that identity, and now, I'm not sure what the plan is, or if there is a plan.
Do you think them making him like Bobby Drake's booty call affected the character?
I don't think it helped.
Because he was just his boyfriend for like 2 years, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it went that long, but I don't think any of that helped the character.
Do you think that was worse than what Steve Orlando did with Somnus?
What happened to Somnus?
Somnus.
I mean, I know the
put
character,
people into a dream sleep, put Daken into a dream sleep, and they fell in love and humped for 1,000 years.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He's the sleep raver.
Yeah. Steve Orlando shouldn't be writing comics.
No.
Yeah.
Did you read Hellverine?
I did not.
Okay, so did you read Sabretooth War?
I did. Yeah.
So in the opening issue, or maybe it's the second issue, they cut up Akihiro and they write out a message to Wolverine with his body parts.
That's right.
It was pretty brutal. It was kind of cool. And then you get into Hellverine, also written by Ben Percy, which I guess comes out right after Wolverine 50, Sabretooth Warrior's over. And Hellverine shows up. And like they go to Logan, they're like, "What are you doing? Why are you Hellverine?" He's like, "What are you talking about? I'm not the Hellverine." He's like, "Let me see that footage." And he looks at the security footage, and then he's like, "Oh my goodness!" And then the big reveal at the end is that it was Daken. I was like, "Was that supposed to be a mystery? Why the fuck is Daken Hellverine?" It literally comes out of nowhere. I didn't know I was supposed to be guessing who Hellverine was.
Spoilers, yeah. No, I I don't know, but also why? So if you're supposed to sign on for the Wolverine War or the Wolverine Sabretooth War being a big deal, which they told us this was be the biggest ever confrontation between the two of them, the war to end all wars, and you're supposed to sign up to that as a not just marketing talk, but real. And Ben Percy went out of his way to say this isn't just hype. This is the biggest story. It's my biggest story over and over and over. Why is it that you end that series and then I guess this Hellverine same week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Comes out and it's like, let's just undo big parts of the biggest story that I ever did. Like, why? I mean, it's I can understand you, like we talked about earlier, you wait a couple of years and things reset, but the same week, like I think
wild.
Chopping the kids up and putting happy birthday in the body parts was meant to be a shock moment.
That was good.
Yeah, but did it matter? I mean, if a week later it's like, nah, they're all fine. I mean,
the weird thing. Remember they did all the hype of adamantium armor. He's got the adamantium armor. The adamantium armor is finally unleashed. Wolverine literally never fights anybody with the adamantium armor. He almost fights Graydon, who gets murdered. He chases after Sabretooth, and as soon as he catches him, he gets drugged down and the adamantium armor is removed.
Yeah.
Never even strikes a blow.
Yeah.
Spec value.
Yeah, no, it's dumb. No, I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, but all of this stuff, like they're not even caring about the stakes they're setting up within their own event. They wasted a couple issues getting us to the adamantium armor.
Did you like the big reveal though about the adamantium armor? It wasn't there to protect Wolverine.
Yeah, it was there to help him heal.
It was there to regenerate his X gene. It's like, why would you waste adamantium? That's like a really limited resource.
You're not meant to think about these things.
I read a lot of comic books, Perch. I can't let stuff like this slide.
You're just supposed to consume.
Oh yeah, turned my brain off. I can forgive a lot, but wasting my time is something I never forgive in any situation.
It's tough. But none of it has to be this way. That's the thing. This stuff is stupid. You don't have to have a adamantium surfboard. That may be a cool idea that comes up on the X-Slack. And you may think, how cool would it be if Wolverine's like surfing around on the same metal that's his claws? And oh wow, that'd be cool. Somebody will put that on a t-shirt. Nobody's putting that on a t-shirt. So don't but that's where these ideas are coming from. And I guarantee you the happy birthday spelled in body parts was something that came out of a Slack conversation of like, hey, it'd be really awesome. Sabretooth's always fucking with Wolverine on his birthday and he'll murder somebody and put a note up. But what if this time he spelled it out with parts of the body? And then that became the story. And you like that moment. That's good. But if 4 issues later, you're like, let's have an armor here and Graydon over here, and let's tie it in with the Sabretooth book over there, and like, fuck it, Hellverine now. I mean, just these stories don't make any sense because they're just talking about moments.
Yeah, definitely want to say special thanks to Perch for joining me here. Obviously, you'll get the full thing on the Patreon. Here on YouTube, you're only going to get maybe 20, 30 minutes of it. If you want the real deal, you got to go to the Patreon. There's a link in the video description. And we had a whole lot of fun running the gamut of comic books this week.